But what about the fundamentals? Nischal Maheshwari, the head institutional equities at Edelweiss Securities, is with us. Nischal, hi, good morning. Always good speaking with you. I wanted your thoughts on how to approach the pharma space now, because suddenly from a slew of bad news, the tide has sort of changed to a slew of good news over the last couple of weeks. You think there is still value in some of the large cap pharmaceutical names, or have they peaked out?
Morning, Sonia. I think there was these approvals which were coming earlier also. The only thing which has changed dramatically is the outlook as far as Sun is concerned, and obviously the regulatory. That was the one thing which I was actually looking out for, that there has to be a positive change as far as the regulatory outlook is concerned, and that has happened, and that's why you are now start seeing that most of the pharma sector stocks have started reacting to positive news. That's one. As far as the pharma stocks are concerned, yes, from the bottom they have run up a bit. Basically, each of these stocks is up anywhere between 15 to 20%. But you have to also keep in mind that they have lost 50% from the top. And most of these stocks basically, and on the street also, I think people are not upgrading the numbers, but as more and more approvals come, and people get that, and the analysts on the street start believing that this is a sustainable thing, I think the upgrade in numbers will start happening. Okay. So I definitely see that there is a good upside as far as pharma is concerned. Most of the large cap stocks looks pretty interesting to us. Our top pick remains to be Dr. Reddy in that. Okay, fair enough.
Nischal, good morning. What about PSU Bank? State Bank of India in particular has had a big rally post its numbers. You reckon there's more to go here?
Anuj, my view on PSU banks have been pretty much the same basically for a long period of time, and I continue to believe that there would be more pain going ahead. So if you really want to still play the corporate heavy banks, I think Axis and ICICI give you a better opportunity out there. So I would prefer those banks on PSU banks.
Morning, Nischal. I was actually taking a look at a note on DMart that you all had released after the analyst meeting, and it was pretty interesting because I think it's a fairly measured sort of reasoning out there whether previous growth levels can really be sustained, because the stock is already pricing in a lot at 40 times, I'm guessing. We just heard VMart Retail talking about first quarter being slightly sluggish. That's just a quarterly phenomena. Generally, what is your call on retail stocks, including the Future Group?
So I think the worst for the brick and mortar model is over basically. I think 2 years back, if you remember, most of these companies had been written off because people thought the online model is here. Yes, it has been here, but if you go back across the world, I think online has not been able to capture more than 10% of any market, and brick and mortar is very much alive and kicking in most of these places. And so similarly we have seen in India also, and obviously in India the organized market had really not taken off. Before that the online market came on. Now they are finding a way together basically, and I see growth for both of them because there's a huge market out there, and I believe still I think the mom and pop stores across the country is 75% of the market as yet. So organized retail, I believe, is not more than 10 to 12% at the moment. So there is a long way to go. I think both retail, both formats of retail will definitely continue to do well.
Okay, that's about retail. Initial TCS, of course, the entire IT space has been in the news, but today TCS will be in focus because of that buyback. In general, what's your top pick in this space now, and how do you see it? I mean, it's been the best performing sector so far this year, but do you see that trend continue?
So IT, our view has been that there has been two changes. Obviously, one is the rupee, which has continued to depreciate, and that's a positive for the sector. But I think the bigger thing basically which we believe is the change in the outlook as far as demand is concerned. And our analysis put it that this has been a change which is happening after 6 to 7 years. We are seeing very strong demand coming back, and this is a cycle basically which is going to sustain for the next 2 to 3 years. And this is not a 1 or 2 quarter kind of a cycle, and that's why we continue to be very positive. Again, I think the valuations are totally in our favor. And our topics there remains to be Infosys, Tech Mahindra, and TCS in that order.
Okay, well, what's interesting is if you look at the emerging markets right now, there's been a bit of a decline that you've seen so far, and that's accentuating and that's reflecting in the SGX Nifty as well. So Nischal, it's been a bit of a tough year, right, for mid-cap investors in particular. Do you see more pain, or you think this is now, of course it's a big basket, but generally we are now at closer to bottom?
So Anuj, what I believe is basically some rationalization is happening as far as mid caps are concerned. So you find that the froth which had got built up in the last year, basically I think some of those stocks which really didn't have a very strong fundamental and had run ahead of valuation, I think those are correcting basically. But you see good stocks basically out there. I think they are still there, and some of the consumption spaces which I had mentioned on your channel last time also basically continue to do, they have also corrected and continue to look pretty good. And building material is one of the things which I had highlighted last time also. I continue to believe that those are the stocks one can look out for.
Okay, you briefly also mentioned ICICI Bank. Wanted to know your thoughts on this whole succession plan for Chanda Kochar that some of the newspaper reports are suggesting. Do you think that could be an added impetus for the stock?
So I'm not really sure actually if there is a plan which is there in place basically, because these are all paper reports and there's nothing to confirm about it. I think it's as yet open.
Okay. Sonal, what's the call on something like a Tata Steel? I mean, that anyway has separate news flow, Nischal. So if you're talking about ferrous metals, which have already corrected quite a bit, would this dip be a decent buying opportunity?
So Surbhi, I think the valuations are definitely in favor of Tata Steel. If I look at the valuation, I think it's 5 times EV to EBITDA, and I think somewhere we are in the mid of the ferrous cycle, may not be the peak of the cycle, and I think it's a good valuation to look at as far as Tata Steel is concerned. But it has got its challenges in Europe basically, where Elliott is now started pushing ThyssenKrupp to actually ask for a better valuation as far as the merger is concerned. And if I put those numbers together, basically, I think that's what we've seen. I think Tata Steel loses somewhere around 7 to 8% of its EV, and that's what I think Tata Steel is reacting to. So till that uncertainty is over, I believe the stock may continue to hang around here. But is it a good price to buy? I definitely think so.
In general, on the markets, how are you positioned, Nischal? I mean, we have been talking about a lot of the pockets of value, but do you feel that this is a market which is heading lower in the near term, at least in the frontliners?
So, my broad thought process is basically, yes, it's going to be volatile, but I think that's pretty much known given a year it is for politics. But when I do the top-down and look at the, bottom-up approach and see what are the stocks basically which can react and take the market down to maybe 10-15%, there's hardly anybody basically which we see going down as far as the Nifty stocks are concerned. Yeah, there are concerns on the PSU banks, but obviously they do not have a much big weight. So I don't see the market coming off very big from here, basically maybe a 5% correction in any eventuality which happens. 5 to 7%, that's the worst basically I see as far as the Nifty is concerned. So yes, it will be volatile, it may not hit a new high, but the downside is also pretty well capped. So I think this is going to be sort of a bottoms-up market or a trading market in this kind of a scenario.
Okay. All right, Nischal, we'll leave it on that note. Thank you very much for being with us this morning and giving us your views on the market and all on the stocks. Speaking of stocks, it's time to actually focus on the ASM list.